They gave me an alien bride in chains. But when I tried to free her, she said. Marcus stared at the alien ship as it descended through the thick clouds, its metallic surface gleaming like a sharp blade against the gray sky. The mission had been clear: secure an alliance with the alien empire, ensure peace between their worlds, and bring back the gift that would solidify the treaty. He had expected many things upon landing on this strange world, but what awaited him was not one of them. The alien soldiers, tall and imposing, escorted him through the gates of the palace. The air felt heavier here, thick with the scent of foreign flora and the hum of unfamiliar technology. His thoughts raced, trying to piece together the history of this alliance. His government had long sought peace, but peace often came at a price that now he feared might be more than he was willing to pay. When they reached the Grand Hall, Marcus was led to a high platform where an elder alien awaited him. The elder's eyes, like liquid silver, studied him with an unsettling calm. In the center of the room, chained and kneeling, was a woman. Her features were like nothing he had ever seen, delicate yet strong, her skin a soft shade of violet, with intricate patterns swirling across her arms like tattoos. Long silver hair cascaded down her back, framing a face that could only be described as otherworldly. Yet it was the chains that caught his attention the most. The woman's eyes met his, and for a moment Marcus was frozen. There was an intensity in her gaze, one that seemed to pierce through him as if she could see into his very soul. His heart skipped a beat. He had been told she was part of the agreement, a gift that would seal the alliance between their people, but seeing her in chains felt wrong. She wasn't just a gift, she was a prisoner. The elder's voice broke through the silence. "This is Thara, your bride. The one who will strengthen the bond between our worlds. Take her and use her wisely." Marcus's stomach twisted. A bride. No, this was a woman in captivity, not a gift to be given away. He had seen his fair share of cruelty, but this was something else. His instinct screamed to free her, but he knew that doing so would likely lead to political disaster. He was here for a mission, and any misstep could destroy the fragile peace they had worked so hard to achieve. The chains clinked as the alien soldiers handed him the woman. Thara didn't fight them. She simply stood, the weight of the chains seemingly inconsequential to her. Her eyes never left Marcus's. It was as if she knew exactly what he was thinking. The strange, heavy silence that hung between them was broken only by the soft sound of her breathing, steady and calm. "Are you truly going to let them treat you like this?" Marcus finally asked, his voice quiet but filled with genuine concern. Thara's lips parted, but no words came out. She simply tilted her head slightly as if pondering his question. Her voice, when it finally came, was calm, almost detached. "I have no choice. This is the way of things." The response chilled Marcus. He had expected defiance, anger, or fear, anything but resignation. But Thara, for all her beauty and grace, seemed utterly devoid of emotion. Her eyes, though, were a different story. Behind the stillness was something far deeper, something Marcus couldn't quite place. He wanted to say more, but the elder's cold gaze locked onto him, silencing any further protest. "You will take her now, human. Our pact is complete. The future of your world depends on this. Let nothing stand in your way." With a final, solemn glance at Thara, Marcus turned to leave the hall, her chains rattling softly as she followed. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. This was not what he had envisioned. He had come for peace, but what he was now carrying was a weight that felt too much to bear. As they left the palace, Marcus couldn't help but glance back. The towering walls of the alien city stood in stark contrast to the soft blue sky above. There was a tension here, an undercurrent of unease that he hadn't fully understood until now. Thara, the so-called gift, was no mere pawn in a political game. There was something more to her, something he couldn't yet grasp. The journey back to his quarters felt like an eternity. Marcus couldn't shake the image of her standing there, chained and broken, yet still holding on to something deep inside her that he couldn't quite understand. Why had she accepted this fate? Was it a submission, or was there a deeper purpose? He had to know more. Once inside his quarters, Marcus turned to face her. Thara stood by the door, her posture perfect, her chains still hanging loosely at her sides. He noticed how carefully she moved, how her eyes scanned the room as if measuring every inch of her new surroundings. She didn't seem frightened, nor did she seem angry. In fact, she seemed almost indifferent. But there was a calmness in her demeanor that intrigued Marcus even more. He stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been good at holding his emotions back. Something about this woman, this alien prisoner, stirred something inside him. A need to protect her, to set her free. But even as he thought it, he knew that freeing her would likely cost him everything. The alliance, the peace, it would all be shattered in an instant. He reached for the chains, his hands trembling as he touched the cold metal. Before he could even attempt to unbind her, Thara's voice stopped him. "No," she said, her tone soft but firm. "You don't understand." Marcus froze. He didn't want to let go of the chains. He didn't want to accept that he couldn't help her, but her words stopped him in his tracks. "I am not your prisoner," Thara continued. "I am your equal. I chose this path." Her words hung in the air, thick with meaning. For the first time, Marcus saw something in her eyes, a glimmer of resolve, of understanding. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't a victim. She was something far more complicated than he had imagined. And in that moment, Marcus realized that freeing her might not be as simple as breaking her chains. Marcus stood still for a long moment, staring at Thara. The words she had spoken echoed in his mind, refusing to leave. "I chose this path." He could hardly believe it. How could anyone choose a life in chains? How could anyone willingly accept such a fate? The thought gnawed at him, but when he looked into her eyes, he saw no trace of fear, no sign of weakness. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, and full of something that resembled quiet strength. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you choose this? Why stay in chains?" Thara looked at him, her eyes softening for just a moment before she spoke again. "It is not what you think." Her voice was calm, measured. "You see chains, but I see opportunity." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He was still trying to wrap his mind around her words. Opportunity. Chains were meant to restrict, to control, not to offer chances for anything. He couldn't understand it, couldn't reconcile the image of her standing there in chains with her calm, composed demeanor. "You don't have to live like this," he said, stepping closer. "There's nothing stopping you. You can be free. I can help you." His hand hovered near the chains around her wrists, his fingers itching to undo them. But he stopped himself, unsure of how to proceed. Thara's eyes flicked down to his hand before meeting his gaze again. "You don't understand, Marcus. You think freedom is something you can simply give, but it's more complicated than that, more than just breaking chains." She paused, as if searching for the right words. "In my world, we fight with more than just weapons. We fight with our minds, our positions, our alliances. Freedom isn't something that can be handed over. It must be earned, sometimes in ways you cannot even begin to imagine." Marcus furrowed his brow. "I don't get it," he admitted. "How can you stand there accepting this? This cruelty?" His voice shook with frustration, and he couldn't keep the anger from creeping into his words. "I don't accept cruelty," Thara said sharply, her voice suddenly filled with more emotion. "But I do accept my role. I've spent years preparing for this moment, playing the part they expected of me, knowing that in the end it would serve a greater purpose. I am not a victim. I am a strategist." Marcus took a step back, processing her words. Thara wasn't the helpless, broken prisoner he had imagined. She wasn't weak, nor was she resigned to her fate. She had chosen this path not out of submission, but out of necessity. It was a choice to play the game, to survive, and eventually to change things from within. His mind raced as he tried to understand her logic. Thara's people had been ruled by an empire that controlled them, bound them to the system. But she hadn't accepted it out of fear or defeat. No, she had chosen this life to give herself the chance to break free in a way that no one else could. "Then what's your plan?" Marcus asked. "How do you plan to change things? How do you plan to free your people?" Thara's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "In time you will see," she said cryptically. "But it will take patience. It will take understanding. It will take more than brute force." Marcus stood in silence for a long moment, still grappling with what she had said. How could someone willingly bind themselves like this? How could she be so calm about something so unnatural? Yet somehow, the more he looked at her, the more he began to understand. Thara wasn't giving up. She wasn't submitting. She was playing a longer game, a dangerous one, but one that could ultimately lead to something much bigger than a single life of freedom. "You don't get to decide for me," she said suddenly, breaking his train of thought. "You don't get to decide what's best for me. You don't get to decide my path." Her voice was firm now, unwavering. He nodded slowly, respecting her strength, but still feeling the weight of the chains that hung from her arms. The chains represented so much more than physical restraint. They were a symbol of a system she was trying to change. But could he just stand by and watch as she carried this burden? Could he accept her reasoning when everything inside him screamed that she deserved more than this? "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I just don't want to see you suffer." Thara's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, Marcus saw something in her that made his heart ache. "I don't suffer," she replied, her voice gentle now. "I endure, and there's a difference." Marcus stared at her, unsure of how to respond. There was so much he didn't understand, so much he had yet to learn about her world, her people, and the complex game she was playing. But one thing was clear: Thara was not a damsel in distress. She was not someone who needed saving. She was a woman with a purpose, a plan, and the strength to carry it out. "I can't promise that I won't try to help you," Marcus said quietly. "I can't promise I won't want to free you from these chains, but I will respect your decision. If you truly believe this is the way forward, then I will stand by you." Thara gave a small nod, the faintest hint of appreciation in her eyes. "Thank you, but know this, Marcus. My freedom is not just about getting rid of chains. It's about something much bigger, and if you truly want to help, you must understand that." He wasn't sure he fully understood, but he knew that Thara wasn't asking for him to fix her. She was asking for him to trust her judgment. And for the first time since meeting her, Marcus began to feel as if he had to let go of his need to control, to fix everything, and simply allow her to lead in her own way. As the hours passed, Marcus and Thara spoke more, sharing ideas and thoughts about the future, about their respective worlds. Marcus learned more about her people, their customs, their struggles, and the choices they had made to survive. Thara's words were not just an explanation of her situation. They were a window into a world he had never imagined, one that was both cruel and compassionate, full of suffering but also hope. By the time the night fell, Marcus felt as if he had only scratched the surface of understanding her. The weight of his earlier thoughts lingered, but he now knew one thing for certain: Thara was not what he had initially thought. She wasn't a helpless victim. She wasn't a prisoner. She was someone who had taken control of her life in a way that few could understand. And she wasn't done yet. He would stand by her no matter what path she chose. The next few days passed in a blur for Marcus. He could not stop thinking about Thara, about the strange and unexpected way she had chosen to live her life. Every time he tried to sleep, her calm voice echoed in his mind, the words she had spoken about her chains and her people. "I endure," she had said. It had been a simple statement, but it carried weight. She was not like any woman he had ever known. She didn't wait for someone to come and rescue her. She didn't expect him to solve her problems. Thara was taking control of her own fate, even if it meant accepting a path that others might see as slavery. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to her story, and he wanted to understand it all. He had spent so many years fighting wars, following orders, never questioning the decisions made for him. But Thara's strength, her calm resolve, made him question everything. Maybe, just maybe, the way he had always seen the world wasn't the only way. That morning, as the sun began to rise over the alien city, Marcus found himself standing outside the small room they had given him for his stay. The sky was an unfamiliar shade of purple, and the air smelled like ozone and metal, a stark contrast to the fresh, earthy air of his home planet. He had never imagined a place like this existed. Yet here he was, trying to wrap his mind around what was happening in this foreign land. He glanced toward the door to the room where Thara was staying, wondering what she was doing. Ever since their conversation about her chains, she had been more distant, but there was something different about her now. She was not angry or upset. Instead, there was a quiet intensity in her demeanor, as if she were constantly planning, thinking, preparing for something greater than either of them could understand. It was still early, so Marcus decided to take a walk through the palace gardens. The complex was massive, with towering structures made of strange, translucent material that seemed to shimmer in the light. The paths were lined with odd plants, some of which Marcus recognized, while others were completely foreign to him. He walked for a while, lost in thought, until he found himself standing by a fountain that cascaded with liquid that glowed faintly blue. As he stood there, staring at the water, he heard footsteps approaching. He turned to see Thara walking toward him. She was wearing a long robe that flowed like liquid silk, her long silver hair catching the light. Despite her chains, she moved with grace, her posture regal, like a queen who had learned to bear the weight of her own world. Marcus, she said, her voice still calm but with a hint of something deeper behind it. We need to talk. He nodded, motioning for her to sit beside him by the fountain. Thara joined him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The only sound was the soft murmur of the glowing water as it flowed. Finally, Thara broke the silence. I can see that you're struggling with what I said, she began, looking at him. You want to help me, I can see it in your eyes. But you need to understand something important. She paused, her eyes distant for a moment as if searching for the right words. This isn't a story of rescue. This isn't a simple matter of freeing me from chains. It's more complicated than that. Marcus nodded, but the frustration inside him grew. Then what is it? What do you want me to do? Thara turned her gaze toward the sky, her eyes reflecting the strange colors above. I told you I chose this path. I chose to live like this because it gives me a chance to change things. If I were to break free now, what would happen? Nothing. I would be one more woman lost to the system, one more who tried to escape and failed. But if I play the game, if I stay within the system long enough, I can change the rules. I can tear it down from the inside. Marcus felt a wave of confusion wash over him. You really believe that? That staying here, being their prisoner, is the way to change things? Thara's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Yes, Marcus, I believe that. I've been planning this for years. You see, the Empire is built on control, on the idea that those in power hold all the cards. But the truth is, they're just as trapped as anyone else. If I can show them that there's another way, a way that doesn't rely on force and violence, then I can change everything. But it won't happen overnight. It will take time, patience, strategy. Marcus felt the weight of her words settle on him. She wasn't just playing a part in some grand political scheme. She was trying to save her people in a way that no one else had ever dared. But it was a dangerous game. He could see that now. If she failed, it would mean her destruction, and possibly the destruction of everyone she cared about. Then what do you need from me? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Thara glanced at him, and for the first time Marcus saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that I can do this. I can't do it alone, but I also can't let anyone stop me. You're here and you're part of this now, whether you like it or not. He stared at her, the conflict inside him growing. He had been sent here to secure an alliance, to bring peace to two worlds that had been at war for centuries. But now he found himself caught in a struggle far deeper than politics, far more complicated than he had ever imagined. He didn't understand it all, but one thing was clear. Thara wasn't just a pawn in a game. She was the player. And if he wanted to help her, he would have to learn how to play by her rules. I'll stand by you, Marcus said finally, his voice firm. I'll help you however I can, but you have to promise me something. What's that? Thara asked, tilting her head slightly. You have to promise me that you won't do anything reckless. I don't want to see you hurt. Thara gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. Recklessness is what the Empire thrives on, but I promise you, Marcus, I will not make a move unless I'm sure it's the right one. But I will need your help, your strength, and your loyalty. Only then can we succeed. He nodded, though doubt still lingered in his mind. It was hard to believe that someone could play a game so dangerous, so intricate, and come out unscathed. But as he looked at Thara, he realized that she wasn't like anyone he had ever known. She was smart, driven, and willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to change her world. And for that, he would stand with her. The silence between them stretched on, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet understanding, an unspoken promise that they were in this together. For better or worse, they were now linked in a way neither of them could deny. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm light across the strange landscape, Marcus knew that things had already changed. The mission he had come here for was no longer just about alliances and peace. It was about something deeper. It was about trust. And in that moment, he realized that Thara was not the only one playing a game of strategy. He had his own role to play now, whether he was ready for it or not. But he wasn't afraid anymore. With Thara by his side, he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And that was enough. As the days passed, Marcus found himself growing more and more involved in Thara's plans. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission was quickly turning into something far more complex. He had come here to help secure peace, but now his mind was occupied with the far-reaching implications of Thara's strategy. She was right about one thing: the system was not going to change easily. It was a system built on power, manipulation, and control. But what struck Marcus the most was that Thara wasn't trying to destroy it. She was trying to reform it, to break it down from within, to change the way things had always been done. It was a bold plan, and as Marcus soon realized, a dangerous one. In the days that followed, Thara began to involve him more directly in her schemes. At first, Marcus had been hesitant. He didn't fully understand how much danger they were both in. But as Thara explained her methods, he began to see the complexity of the game she was playing. She was moving carefully, step by step, like a chess player planning her next move. Every action had a purpose. Every word she spoke was carefully chosen. She didn't trust anyone completely, not even Marcus, but he was a necessary ally. He had skills and knowledge that could help her, and over time, he came to realize just how important his role would be. Thara had begun to set her plan in motion by gaining the trust of the higher-ups in the Empire, those who ruled over the worlds they had conquered. She had already infiltrated their circles, gathering information and allies in secret. It was a slow process, but one that had been years in the making. She told Marcus that she had already been laying the groundwork for her revolution long before he had arrived. It had been a quiet war, one fought with whispers, with influence, and with the careful accumulation of power. One evening, as the two of them sat together in his quarters discussing the latest developments, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had come to admire Thara's determination, but he also knew that her plan was dangerous. She was playing with forces far bigger than anything he had ever dealt with before. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and everything could come crashing down. "Do you ever worry?" he asked, his voice quiet as he watched her. "Do you ever worry that all of this could fail?" Thara didn't answer right away. She sat across from him, her posture still, her eyes focused on something far beyond the walls of their room. It was a look of concentration, as if she were already calculating her next steps. Finally, she spoke. "Every day," she said softly. "I worry that something will go wrong. I worry that the people I trust will turn on me, that the Empire will catch on to what I'm doing. But I can't let that stop me. The stakes are too high. My people need me. They need this change." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had seen her dedication, her determination to see her plan through, even when it seemed impossible. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they were both playing a dangerous game. He didn't want to lose her, didn't want to see her fall into the very system she was trying to destroy. "You don't have to do this alone, you know," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm here. I want to help. I won't let you do this by yourself." Thara looked at him then, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes that made him realize how much she had changed since they had first met. There was a softness there, a trust that she hadn't shown before. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had formed, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by the steely resolve that had always been there. "I never planned to do it alone," she replied, "but I don't want you to be part of this unless you understand the risks. This will not be easy. There will be sacrifices, some people will be hurt and some will die. I cannot promise that you'll be safe. I cannot promise that everything will turn out the way we hope." Marcus didn't flinch. He had come to realize that he wasn't just here to watch Thara's revolution unfold. He was a part of it now. He was already too deep into her world, and he wouldn't back out just because it had become dangerous. "I understand," he said, meeting her gaze. "I don't need promises. I just need to know that we're doing the right thing." Thara studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. Then, without saying another word, she stood up and walked over to a desk in the corner of the room. She pulled out a small, encrypted data pad and handed it to Marcus. "This is the next step," she said. "I've secured a meeting with one of the high-ranking officials in the Empire. He's been an ally of mine for a long time, but he's starting to grow suspicious. I need you to go to the meeting with me. He'll be more likely to trust me if you're there, but be careful. He doesn't like humans and he doesn't trust you. If things go wrong, we may not make it out alive." Marcus took the data pad from her hands, his mind racing as he processed the information. It was dangerous, but it was the next step in her plan. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. One wrong word, one wrong gesture, and they could both be in deep trouble. But he wasn't going to back down, not now, not when they were so close. "I'll be ready," he said, his voice steady. Thara nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. "I know you will be. That's why I'm trusting you with this." The meeting was set for the following evening. And as the sun began to set on the alien world, Marcus found himself standing beside Thyra in the grand hall of the palace. They were dressed in formal attire, a sign of respect for the high-ranking official they were about to meet. Thyra had chosen to wear a simple, elegant gown that contrasted with the heavy chains she still wore. Even in her restraints, she looked every bit the queen she was meant to be. The official arrived promptly, flanked by his own guards. He was a tall, imposing figure with dark, calculating eyes that immediately locked onto Marcus. There was no warmth in his gaze, only suspicion. "So this is the human," the official said, his voice cold. "The one who is supposed to help Thyra with her rebellion." Marcus stiffened, but he kept his expression neutral. "I'm here to assist in whatever way I can," he said, keeping his tone respectful but firm. "I've been told that you're an ally of Thyra," the official snorted, his gaze flicking toward Thyra. "I have my doubts, but I have no choice but to play along for now." Thyra stepped forward, her presence commanding. "You've always known where I stand," she said, her voice steady. "And you know what's at stake. If you choose to oppose me, you will lose. The Empire is falling apart and you're too blind to see it. Help me or stand aside." The official studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing as he considered her words. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, I'll help you, but don't think for a second that I trust you fully." As the meeting continued, Marcus felt a mix of relief and unease. They had gained another ally, but they were far from out of danger. The game was far from over, and every move they made from here on out would be crucial. When the meeting was over and the official had departed, Thyra turned to Marcus, her expression unreadable. "Do you see now?" she asked. "This is how it's done. We move carefully. We build alliances one step at a time. We don't rush. We wait for the right moment." Marcus nodded. "I understand," he said quietly, "but it still doesn't feel safe." "It's not supposed to feel safe," Thyra replied. "It's supposed to feel like a risk, but risks are necessary if we're going to change anything." As they walked out of the meeting room, Marcus knew one thing for sure: they were in this together. And no matter how dangerous it got, he wasn't going to let Thyra face it alone. The morning after the meeting with the high-ranking official, Marcus woke early, his mind swirling with the events of the previous night. The alliance they had gained was fragile, and there was a sense of urgency in the air. Thyra had been right when she said they were playing a dangerous game. Every decision, every move could tip the balance. They had made progress, but the road ahead was still unclear, and the risks were higher than ever. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had settled deep in his chest. He had agreed to this, he had chosen to help Thyra, but now that they were getting deeper into her plan, the weight of the situation was becoming more difficult to ignore. Thyra had warned him about the dangers, and he had heard her loud and clear. But the reality of it, the risk, the constant threat of betrayal, the possibility of failure, was starting to feel overwhelming. He stood up, dressed in his usual uniform, and walked over to the small window. The alien city outside was still, bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun. The sky was a pale shade of purple, the distant mountains faintly visible in the distance. Despite the beauty of the scene, there was an underlying tension that hung over everything. It was as if the city was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Thyra had gone to meet with a few more allies early that morning, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He had always been a soldier, used to following orders, used to being part of a machine that operated on logic and strategy. But this was different. There was no clear enemy to fight, no battlefield to command. Everything felt unpredictable. After a few minutes of quiet reflection, Marcus shook his head and turned away from the window. He couldn't afford to waste time on doubt. Thyra needed him, and he had made a commitment. He would stay by her side, no matter what happened. He had already seen what she was capable of, and he had come to respect her more than he had ever thought possible. As he walked out of his quarters, he saw Thyra approaching from across the hall. She was moving quickly, her expression focused, as always. Despite the heavy chains that still clung to her wrists, there was an elegance in her movements, a quiet strength that was impossible to ignore. When she saw Marcus, she gave him a brief nod, her face serious. "We need to move quickly," she said without preamble. "The situation has escalated. We've lost another ally." Marcus felt a sharp pang in his chest. "How? What happened?" Thyra stopped in front of him, her eyes flicking to the side as if she were considering how much to reveal. "One of our contacts was discovered by the Empire." They were compromised. I don't know how much they've learned, but it's enough to make things more difficult for us. Marcus felt a wave of frustration rise within him. They had worked so hard to gain allies, to build trust. The thought that all of it could be undone in an instant was infuriating. What does this mean for us? It means we need to act faster, Thara replied, her voice calm but filled with urgency. We can't afford to waste any more time. The Empire is closing in. We'll need to take a more direct approach. Marcus frowned. What kind of approach? Thara's eyes narrowed, and for a moment there was something in her gaze that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. We're going to make a statement. We're going to show them that we're not afraid. The gravity of her words settled on him. Thara wasn't just talking about a small operation or a minor rebellion. She was talking about something bigger, something that could change everything. And what's the plan? Thara stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. We have one final ally, someone with the power to influence the entire empire. If we can convince them to join our cause, it will tip the balance in our favor. But getting to them will be dangerous. We'll need to move quickly, and we'll need to take risks. Marcus nodded, his mind racing. He didn't fully understand the intricacies of her plan, but he knew that Thara was right. If they didn't act now, they could lose everything. The Empire had already proven how quickly it could turn on those who didn't comply. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady. What do we need to do? Thara looked at him for a long moment as if measuring his resolve. Then she handed him a small data pad. This is the location of our final ally, she said. I've arranged for a meeting, but it's risky. We'll need to be careful. I trust you, Marcus, but know this, if things go wrong, there will be no turning back. Marcus took the data pad, his fingers brushing against hers for a brief moment. I understand, he said. He didn't need her to say anything more. He was already in this, as deep as she was. There was no turning back now. Together they left the palace, making their way through the winding corridors and into the streets of the city. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows over the buildings, and the air was thick with tension. They walked side by side, the weight of the mission heavy on their shoulders. Every corner they turned, every alley they passed, Marcus felt the eyes of the Empire on them. He knew that they were being watched, that their every move was being scrutinized. But he also knew that Thara had a plan, and as long as he stayed by her side, he would follow her wherever she led. As they reached the outskirts of the city, they found a quiet spot to stop and assess the situation. Thara pulled out a small, handheld communicator and began typing in coordinates. Marcus watched her work, his heart pounding in his chest. The closer they got to their goal, the more the risks seemed to multiply. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. After a few moments, Thara looked up from the communicator, her face set in a determined expression. It's time, she said. Get ready. Marcus nodded, gripping his weapon more tightly. They had come too far to back down now. They made their way to the meeting point, a small, discreet building on the edge of the city. It was quiet, abandoned almost, and the shadows stretched long across the ground. Marcus could hear the faint hum of distant engines in the air, but nothing else. The place felt like it was holding its breath. When they arrived, a figure stepped out of the shadows, a tall, imposing individual whose face was obscured by a hood. The person looked at them, and for a moment there was an uncomfortable silence. Then the figure spoke. You came. Thara stepped forward, her eyes focused on the person in front of her. We had no choice. You're the only one who can help us now. The figure tilted their head, their expression unreadable. And you trust me, after everything? Thara's gaze never wavered. I trust you because I have no other choice, and because I know that you want the same thing I do. For a long moment the figure said nothing, then nodded slowly. Fine, I'll help, but understand this, if we're caught, it's over for all of us. Thara nodded in return. We know the risks. With that, they began the final part of the plan. The figure handed over the information they needed, and Thara quickly examined the data. It was the key to everything. If they could use it right, it would bring the Empire to its knees. As Marcus watched, the reality of the situation sank in. They were playing the final hand, and the stakes had never been higher. One wrong move, and they could all be lost. Are you ready? Thara asked, turning to him. Marcus didn't hesitate. Let's do this. As they left the meeting point, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of finality in the air. They had taken the last step in their plan. Now all they could do was wait for the Empire to respond. And when it did, everything would change. Thara glanced at him, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "We've come this far, Marcus. We can't stop now." And for the first time, Marcus believed it. No matter what came next, he would stand by her, because in the end, they were in this together.